It started like any other summer camp session. Sweat on the field, helmets clashing, coaches barking, and young quarterbacks eager to prove why they belong under the brightest lights in football. But then, out of nowhere, the atmosphere shifted. A routine practice snap turned into a storm that no one in the NFL or college football saw coming. Because in the middle of that practice field, two names collided. Dillon Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, and the fallout? Enough to rattle locker rooms across the league. The whispers spread before the official reports even dropped. Players texted friends. Staff made hush phone calls. Reporters caught the edge of the story before anyone was ready to confirm it. But the headline was inevitable. Shedeur Sanders, Coach Prime's golden son, Colorado's pride, the quarterback being groomed to shake the foundation of the NFL, was down. Not from a blitz, not from a freak accident, but from an altercation, a camp brawl that spiraled into chaos. The footage? Locked up tight. Teams knew if even a single clip leaked, the internet would detonate. But eyewitnesses were already talking. Words like shove, swing, hit the ground hard. And at the center of it all, Dillon Gabriel, the transfer, the fighter, the quarterback with his own chip on his shoulder, wasn't backing down. For Shedeur, the image hit harder than the impact itself. The son of Deion Sanders, a man who has built an empire on swagger, control, and intimidation, laid out in a practice field scuffle. For haters, it was blood in the water. For fans, it was panic. And for the NFL, it was a nightmare headline they didn't want anywhere near their draft boards. But here's the twist. Instead of hiding, instead of letting silence control the story, Shedeur Sanders leaned into the storm. Because when reporters cornered him later, expecting excuses or damage control, Shedeur just smirked. His voice steady, his words cutting sharper than the hit that had dropped him. "You saw what happened. I'm still standing. That's all you need to know." Boom. Just like that, the narrative flipped. What could have been a moment of weakness became a rallying cry. The clip went viral. Analysts dissected the tone. Fans reposted with captions like QB1 mentality and unshakable. And Dillon Gabriel? His role shifted instantly too. No longer just a transfer trying to prove himself. Suddenly, he was the guy who went toe-to-toe with Shedeur Sanders and left a mark. The story wasn't just about a fight anymore. It was about ego, power, reputation, and what happens when the next generation of quarterbacks refuse to back down, even against each other. And deep inside the Browns camp, where rumors about Shedeur's future had already been brewing, this incident sent shockwaves. Coaches had to ask themselves, is this fire a liability or the exact spark their franchise needs? The thing about moments like this, they don't stay locked inside the practice field. They escape. They grow. They become legends before the dust even settles. By the next morning, every sports desk from ESPN to FS1 had the same question flashing across their rundown sheets. What really happened between Shedeur Sanders and Dillon Gabriel? And that's where the story split into two worlds. In the first world, the official narrative, everything was handled internally. Coaches stood at podiums, muttering cliches about competition, intensity, and boys being boys. Nobody wanted to admit it had gone too far. Nobody wanted to admit that fists were thrown, that helmets were ripped, that one of college football's brightest stars had to be helped up off the turf. But in the second world, the one whispered in locker rooms and blasted across social media, the story was much messier. Players who were there didn't hold back. Some said Shedeur had been chirping all day. His usual confidence turned up a notch too high. Others claimed Dillon Gabriel, always fighting to prove he belonged in the spotlight, finally snapped after one too many barbs. Either way, it ended the same. Gabriel lunging, Shedeur falling, teammates swarming to separate them. And here's where things got even crazier. Instead of fading, the moment exploded. Fans didn't just debate it, they picked sides. Hashtags like hashtag Team Shedeur and hashtag Ride with Gabriel started trending. Old highlight reels resurfaced, spliced together like political ads. Analysts ran tale of the tape breakdowns, comparing their stats, their leadership, their toughness. It wasn't just a fight anymore. It was a referendum. And Shedeur? He played it perfectly. Every camera that pointed his way, every mic shoved in his face, he never once looked rattled. No limp, no excuses, no apology. Just that same icy calm. "Football's a fight," he said once. "Sometimes it spills over, but I don't break." That line hit like lightning. ESPN replayed it in slow motion, the panel debating whether it was a sign of immaturity or a glimpse of a quarterback who thrives under chaos. Meanwhile, Gabriel's camp struggled to spin it. For every voice praising his fire, Another questioned his discipline. Scouts scribbled notes. Executives whispered. Was he the kind of guy you want leading a huddle, or the kind who'd lose it when the pressure gets too high? But here's what nobody could deny. Shedeur Sanders walked away from that brawl with more power than he had before it. His reputation, instead of cracking, calcified. He wasn't just Prime's kid anymore. He was his own man, standing in the middle of a storm, daring anyone to knock him off his feet again. And the Browns? Oh, they were watching. Every second, every headline. Because behind closed doors, they weren't just evaluating Shedeur's arm or his footwork anymore. They were evaluating his control, his ability to turn a crisis into a weapon. That's when the whispers started growing louder. Maybe this wasn't just a camp fight. Maybe this was a preview. A glimpse of what Shedeur Sanders would bring to the NFL: fire, drama, electricity, and a refusal to stay quiet. The NFL doesn't like surprises. It likes control. Schedules, contracts, depth charts. Every detail is mapped, managed, and massaged for public consumption. So when word of the Shedeur Sanders, Dillon Gabriel clash broke free of the camp bubble, front offices didn't see a fight. They saw a threat. Because make no mistake, this wasn't just about two young quarterbacks scrapping in the heat of practice. This was about image, about brand, about the NFL's carefully polished machine being hijacked by one clip, one soundbite, one viral firestorm it couldn't contain. And Shedeur, he wasn't hiding from it. The league expected the rookie to play nice. Maybe issue a quiet apology, release a statement about learning moments, fade into the background until the smoke cleared. That's how the playbook has always been written. But Shedeur Sanders doesn't follow anyone's playbook but his own. When asked about Dillon Gabriel directly, he didn't flinch. He's a competitor. So am I. That's why it happened. But if you think a shove is enough to take me out, you haven't been paying attention. Boom. That was the line. Clipped, reposted, spliced into TikToks, captioned with fire emojis. It wasn't defensive. It wasn't soft. It was dominance. And that's when the panic set in, because the NFL knows exactly what that kind of confidence means. It's not just about playing ability, it's about narrative control. Once a player owns his own story, once he becomes the headline instead of waiting for one to be written, the league loses leverage. Behind the scenes, executives started dialing scouts. What did they really think of Shedeur's temperament? Could he handle the pressure of a locker room divided by loyalty? Could he command respect after being dropped in camp? Or was this all just bravado? But here's the irony. The more they doubted, the more they watched. The more they questioned, the more they realized Shedeur wasn't shrinking. He was growing. Teammates noticed it too. Whispers floated out of camp that players, especially veterans, were taking Shedeur more seriously after the brawl, not less. Why? Because in football, respect isn't earned by avoiding conflict. It's earned by walking through it and coming out standing. And Shedeur stood tall. Meanwhile, Dillon Gabriel's name swirled in a very different storm. His fiery outburst was praised by some as passion, condemned by others as recklessness. He became the other side of the coin, the cautionary tale in every segment that debated leadership and composure. But the real story wasn't Gabriel. It was the kid who refused to let the NFL paint him as a victim. The one who turned a camp brawl into a showcase of grit. By the time the next practice rolled around, all eyes were on Shedeur. Would he hang back? Would he play it safe? Not a chance. Reports say he took the first rep, called his own adjustments, and threw a perfect dart over the middle. Like nothing had happened. Like the storm never touched him. That's when fans knew this wasn't just a fight. This was the moment Shedeur Sanders proved he wasn't here to survive the league. He was here to bend it to his will. And the NFL, they were left scrambling. The fallout didn't stay in Colorado. It never does. The NFL is a copycat league, but it's also a gossip league. What happens in one camp doesn't just ripple. It detonates across 32 franchises, into every scout's notebook and every executive's late-night meeting. And this was different, because Shedeur Sanders didn't just survive a camp brawl, he weaponized it. He took a moment that should have been embarrassing, maybe even damaging to his reputation, and flipped it into a power move. That scared people, not just opponents, not just the Browns staff who were already sweating over how to handle him. It scared the system. Think about it. The old NFL way says rookies keep their heads down. They earn respect quietly. They wait their turn, follow orders, and only speak when spoken to. That model works fine until someone like Shedeur steps in and tears the script to shreds. This wasn't about Dillon Gabriel anymore. It wasn't even about the brawl. It was about a quarterback who refused to be controlled. Deion Sanders himself couldn't resist weighing in. Coach Prime has built his entire legacy on confidence, swagger, and defiance against the odds. When asked about the incident, his response was classic Prime. "My son ain't soft. You can hit him, you can push him, you can drag him through the mud, but he's still gonna shine. That's what makes him different." And just like that, the fire burned hotter. Headlines stopped asking, "Did Shedeur get exposed?" and started asking, "Is this kid already the leader Cleveland needs?" Inside the Browns facility, it was chaos. Coaches preached unity, insisting the fight was nothing, just camp energy boiling over. But the players weren't dumb. They saw the shift. They saw Shedeur's words echo louder than Stefanski's press conference. They saw fans showing up to camp wearing bootleg t-shirts with Shedeur's post-brawl quote splashed across the chest: "I don't break." The merchandise, the memes, the debates, it all added up to one brutal truth for Cleveland's front office. Shedeur Sanders had become bigger than their plan for him, and that's the danger. Once a player's story outgrows the system either adapts or it collapses. Executives whispered that this was déjà vu. The same way Baker Mayfield once turned the Browns into a circus, Shedeur was turning their quiet quarterback plan into a national storyline. But here's the difference. Shedeur wasn't just loud. He was calculated. Every word he spoke hit like a headline. Every action he took only built the legend. And legends don't wait. So now the Browns are faced with an impossible choice. Do they bench him, risk the locker room, and hope the storm dies down? Or do they hand him the keys to the offense earlier than planned, knowing full well it could spark a new era or blow up in their faces? Either way, one thing is certain. The NFL can't unsee what just happened. Shedeur Sanders isn't just a rookie in waiting anymore. He's the quarterback who stood in the middle of a fight, stared down the chaos, and came out stronger. The whispers aren't whispers anymore. They're predictions. Bold ones. Dangerous ones. Because if this is how Shedeur Sanders handles a brawl in camp, what's he going to do when the lights are brightest? When the real games begin? When the entire NFL is watching? No one knows the answer yet, but everyone knows one thing. The league isn't ready for it. And Shedeur Sanders? He's more than ready to deliver.